Hello, everyone. Welcome to Urban Elephant Media's presentation of a webcast that will explain how design teams have used LEED's Informing Design credits to showcase additional value for their designs. My name is Randy Rogers of Urban Elephant Media. We provide sustainability training for civic leaders and professionals in all 50 states and around the world. Today's presentation is sponsored by AutoCase, the economic lens for sustainable and resilient design. Our speakers today are Jill Kurtz, a Principal and Director of Building Sciences at Page, Ava Reichert-Lanowski, who is Senior Project Manager at Ecovert Sustainability Consultants, and Riley McKillop, an Account Manager and Economist at AutoCase. So now, Riley, go ahead and get started as soon as you're ready to go.
Awesome. Thank you for those introductions, Randy. And welcome everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join our webinar today on uncovering more value in your design than you might know. And we'll also be covering how to get up to two LEED credits instantly. So again, I'm joined by Jill, who's based out of Page's Houston office, as well as Ava, who's based out of Ecovert's Toronto office. So the agenda today will be covering first, what are those LEED pilot credits that we're able to achieve using the AutoCase software? We'll also be covering how AutoCase can automate the credit submission process. We'll be covering successful pilot credit project examples led by both Jill and Ava, followed up by a quick software demo to give you a look and feel, and as well as relative ease of using the AutoCase software. And then we'll follow up with a Q&A session. So any questions that you do have, as Randy mentioned, please enter them in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them at the end of the presentation. So today we'll be covering triple bottom line analysis, and you'll hear that mentioned quite frequently. So I figured it'd be good to start right off the bat with describing, make sure that we're all on the same page. What is a triple bottom line analysis? So overall, financial impacts from high performance buildings are really just the tip of the iceberg, but are often emphasized when we look at high performance building design strategies. But below the surface, buildings also have broad implications to both society and the environment. So by choosing design strategies, really can generate co-benefits to both the occupant as well as community stakeholders. And we can do this by incorporating resilient strategies into the overall project design. So the graphic on the right-hand side there really is just showing you that financial impacts really shouldn't dominate the conversation when we're looking at various design strategies, when really we should be focusing on the bulk of the impacts, including both the social and environmental based impacts. So with that said, what are the pilot credits that you're able to actually achieve using the AutoCase software? So there's two that you can achieve using the AutoCase software. First one being informing design using the triple bottom line analysis. And that is achieved by simply just running a triple bottom line analysis on any 6 credits available within the software. So quite easy. The second one is by major credit category using the triple bottom line analysis. And the main differentiation between the second one there is that, let's say if we're optimizing energy and atmosphere related credits, we can target both optimizing energy performance as well as renewable energy production, which would satisfy the first major credit category. And let's say if we're also targeting water efficiencies, both indoor and outdoor water use reductions, we're able to satisfy the second major credit category. And really the overall intent is to demonstrate, again, the triple bottom line impact, so the economic, social, and environmental value of LEED design strategies by using peer-reviewed literature ultimately to help inform the design process, and really shifting the conversation from what's the upfront cost to what's the value of actually implementing this particular design strategy. So really what we want to show using AutoCase here is that you're able to provide a holistic picture of the full impacts that these design strategies are meant to provide, but also being able to tell a story as to why you should be including these design strategies and justify them to the project stakeholders. So AutoCase can automate this process of achieving these 2 LEED pilot credits by ultimately quantifying and monetizing the financial business case, as well as its social and environmental co-benefits. So by the financial business case, this will encompass any type of additional upfront costs, operations and maintenance. And let's say if we're avoiding energy and water consumption within the building, we'd also have some financial savings from utilities. So by avoiding electricity, natural gas, as well as water consumption, those would all be encompassed under the financial based impacts. While social impacts are really geared towards indoor occupants. So if we improve the indoor environmental quality of the space, for example, we're able to actually increase productivity of those employees within the space. We're able to reduce associated health costs from sick building syndrome. Once we have healthier employees in the space, we're also able to reduce the absenteeism rates of those employees. So instead of being at home sick, they're able to be present at work and actually provide value to the business. On the environmental side, this really encompasses any reductions in terms of emissions and broader air pollution. So again, if we avoid energy use coming from the local utility grid, we're able to avoid carbon emissions as well as air pollutants, which are representative of criteria air contaminants. So nasty things like nitrous oxide, sulfur dioxide, particulate matter, and the likes. So how do we actually use the AutoCase software? It's very, very easy to get your first project set up and created. So we'll ask for some very basic information like your project location, the gross floor space of that particular project that we're analyzing, as well as the relevant LEED categories that are applicable to your particular project. So in our first phase one of the new software release, we have 3 current category selections that you can choose from. First being energy and atmosphere, encompassing optimized energy performance, renewable energy production, and any type of green power or carbon offsets. Water efficiency, which encompasses indoor water use as well as outdoor water use reductions, as well as indoor environmental quality. So any strategies that are focused on, let's say, daylighting or thermal comfort, enhanced air quality strategies, as well as low emitting materials, we're able to capture those under the indoor environmental quality category selection. In phase 2 of our software release, we'll also soon be releasing sustainable sites as well as location and transportation credits, which will overall include heat island reduction, rainwater management, as well as bicycle facilities and green vehicles. So in order to actually use the AutoCase software, you enter in very basic information from your LEED submission that you should have handy. So let's say if we're looking at optimized energy performance, it'll prompt you for how many LEED points you were able to achieve in this particular credit, as well as what is the energy reduction relative to a baseline building on both electricity and natural gas. We can see the pop-up on the right-hand side there, which gives us a quick progress report in terms of how many credits we've actually analyzed, whether or not we're meeting those required credits in order to achieve those LEED pilot credits, but then we're able to get some overall project intermediary metrics. So based off the design strategies that we have inputted in the software, we'd expect 26,000 tons of carbon to be reduced, which is the equivalent of actually reducing 230 cars off the road, which is rather sizable. So overall, once you have all of those design inputs all ready to go in the software, you can click Run Results and it'll instantly spit out a business case, which will give you the lifecycle financial, social, environmental value, which is representative of the triple bottom line. Overall, and I do have a highlight on the right-hand side there, that these results are location specific. So the software has very much granular data when it comes to your project location. So we'll take into account the local utility rates for both electricity, natural gas, as well as water. And we'll also take a look at the regional grid makeup to see how dirty the grid is and how much carbon we might be able to avoid, as well as air pollution from the energy that's being sourced to the building. On the societal-based side, we're also able to capture any local building wages, which are really determined by the typology of the building, and again, that location. So very specific analyses that are location-specific that you're able to run instantaneously using the AutoCase software. Once you have the results ran, you can collaborate, export, and share them rather easily with either different project teams or the overall client. So we have a standardized 2-page download that will give you some nice snapshots in terms of how your design strategies stack up. So we can speak to the lifecycle financial impacts, social and environmental, list out the total LEED points, as well as normalize that in terms of how much value are we generating per LEED point achieved. We'll also give a call out to the total carbon reduction. So again, 26,000 tons of carbon reduced over the project lifetime. And then we'll also break it down in tabular format in order to see what are the biggest drivers in each of those categories. Let's say financial savings from electricity. On the social side, avoided health costs, increases in productivity. And on the environmental side, any carbon emission reductions, as well as air pollution reductions. And really putting a monetized value on top of your design strategies that you have inputted within the software. From then, you can actually submit seamlessly to USGBC or CAGBC, depending on your project location. So we have a full report download that has all of our methodologies listed. We base ourselves based off transparency, so you're able to see how all these impacts are actually calculated, and any sources that we use in order to monetize these impacts. So very easy and very seamless in order to actually achieve those 2 LEED pilot credits once you have the project created and inputted in the software. And this is hot off the press this week, where we're actually offering a USGBC membership discount. So if your organization happens to be silver, gold, or platinum USG member status, you're able to take advantage of a 50% discount off your basic AutoCase subscription, which includes your first project that you're able to run in AutoCase. If you're interested in learning more, you can visit autocase.com/lead in order to learn more, and we can get you started with your first project. And now we'll be moving along to some case studies of successful pilot credits that have been achieved on projects, and I will pass it over to Ava.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so yeah, I'll run you through a few case studies. So at Ecovert, we're sustainable building consultants. We do various types of sustainable building certifications, but for these case studies, we're going to be talking about AutoCase and how it achieved the pilot credit for LEED certification specifically. So the pilot credit that we've been using, because Riley mentioned 2, the one that we've been using specifically is the informing design using triple bottom line analysis. So that's using the triple bottom line cost benefit analysis for at least 6 LEED projects. So 3 of those are actually a core mandatory credit, and then the other 3 you select from your scorecard off of the project specific scorecard. So what we're doing is this is including the analyzing the financial, economic aspects, environmental and social cost benefits of all those selected credits. And the project types we've been using this on recently is warehouse and distribution projects. So we've been working with corporate clients with highly ambitious sustainable goals that are looking to do something better for their entire building portfolio. So they've been using triple bottom line to show the impacts of those warehouse and distribution projects. And we've been getting quite an increase in demand for these kind of projects to look at the sustainability aspect and certifications for these projects pretty much ever since COVID hit, and people have been doing a lot of online shopping. These goods and products do need to be stored somewhere, so that's why there's an increase in demand for the warehousing. So this is the first project that I'm going to talk about. So the client on this project is a Global Transportation and Logistics Corporation. The rating system they used in LEED was actually specifically the warehouse path. The size is 1.1 million square feet. It's located in Ontario, Canada. And the key features for this project is that 50% of the loading docks have electric chargers. So the client was actually interested to do this. So right now the fleet is still running on gas, but in the future maybe they're going to look at replacing that fleet with electric vehicles. So being used so the trucks don't idle. So you're reducing the pollution kind of right at the loading docks for the health of the workers in the building. And also it's that path of going electric. So Riley was talking about kind of GHG reductions and everything. That's the idea that most of our clients kind of think about. In the province of Ontario, our grid is quite clean. We're using hydro and a little bit of nuclear as well. We've been phasing out and currently do not use coal. So, and then given that clean grid, I think a lot of people are interested to continue using the electric power. Another feature of this building is the rainwater is used for flushing for the main office washrooms. And that's where majority of the employees of this building sit. So there are 150 employees in this building. 80% of them are sitting in the main office. There's several people throughout the warehouse, and there's a few shipper offices, but most of it is in the main portion where we're using the rainwater cistern. Another feature of this building is the white roof. So this is the white roof plus actually concrete truck aprons that you see actually in the image, top image there you have the concrete and bottom the white roof. So it's the reflective values of these materials to reduce the heat island effects. And So the next project is also a warehouse distribution center. The client is actually a food manufacturer. So it's quite a large property of land. So it's various buildings that are actually getting LEED certified separately. The building next door to this is actually where they manufacture the food, but they wanted to build a new facility for the warehousing portion and actually storage of some of the food. So there was a little component of refrigerated areas as well in this project. Significantly smaller than the last one. So this is 450,000 square feet, also located in Ontario, Canada. The key features for this building are a reduced parking footprint. So our client actually worked with the municipality to reduce the amount of parking because the municipality was requesting several hundred parking spaces for employees for occupancy, but our client knew that the actual occupancy numbers, so they were willing to reduce those parking spaces by 30%. Also the interest of using and going electric, so there's installed EV charging stations, plus the vision for the future, they added rough-in for easy install for future EV charging stations. And we were able to achieve 40% indoor water reduction just through using ultra low flow and flush washrooms. The client was willing to do that. And in the last project, actually with the cistern, I forgot to mention the percentage. So it's 55% indoor water reduction was actually achieved on that project. And continuing with this one, so the client was also interested for interior lighting quality because there are a lot of employees working throughout the warehouse space, not just in the offices. They wanted a pleasant environment. So if you see on the right hand side there, that image of light colors for both the ceilings and walls. And finally, for the innovation, we have sustainable building policies. So this is ongoing kind of sustainable efforts that the client wants to continue as they operate the building. So they actually implemented a lot of operation and maintenance policies. The building, they don't own the building, they lease it, but they are in a long-term lease for more than a decade. So they're staying put and they want to make sure they're continuing in a sustainable fashion. So how did we use AutoCase for these projects? Well, the Ecovert team, we inserted the late stage design information on the project's energy and water efficiency targets, along with the indoor environmental quality strategies into the AutoCase software. So as Riley kind of demonstrated, and we'll do the demo too, is it's quite straightforward. You have like whatever credits you're targeting and you've selected for the triple bottom line analysis. They all appear on the platform. Our team had all the required inputs for that analysis already on hand. Sure. And sometimes like we actually do this in early stages too with preliminary calculations and things. So we also do it earlier in the design stages. And right here you have the 6 credits that were selected actually for both projects. And the outcome for these projects was that the first building I talked about, the Global Logistics Center, they were awarded LEED Silver. And the second project for the food manufacturer, they were awarded LEED Certified. These were the targeted and desired goals for the clients that were achieved, and they achieved the 1 pilot credit. So it's the informing design using triple bottom line analysis using the AutoCase software. So inputting those 6 credits in there. If you look on the right hand side, you'll see what the results were as well for the triple bottom line benefits. And they were actually quite similar for both projects because they're in the same location. They were analyzing the same credits. So for financial, it was 22% benefits. For social, it was 10%. And for environmental, it was 67%. And the only kind of challenge that we had for these projects, it's nothing to do with the AutoCase software, because that's quite straightforward, but the challenge that we found on these building types and where they're located, it was actually challenging to get the to target 2 of the pilot credits for the 2 points. So we haven't gotten a chance to work with the newer AutoCase version yet. So I believe that like the changes that I've seen will help us target probably 2 on even on these project types. So we're looking forward to. And now I think Jill will take over for her portion of continuing the case studies.
Wonderful, thank you for that. Jill Kurtz here. Make sure I've got everything going. I am a little worried about my bandwidth, so I think I'm going to turn my video off for a second just to make sure you guys can see and hear everything appropriately. So I'm going to talk, I'm from Page, I'm the Director of Building Sciences and Sustainability. We're a large architecture engineering kind of interdisciplinary firm. I'm located, like you said, in Houston. I want to talk to you about a project we just completed in Austin, Texas. The project I want to talk with you about is LEED Tower. This is a large office building, core and shell we just completed. And the kind of mantra I want to hit home with you all is pursuing rigor is important in order to measure our impact. So like I said, this project is located in Austin, Texas. It is a large core and shell project, 730,000 square feet. The client we had was Trammell Crow Companies. They were the developer, principal became the investor, and Kilroy Properties actually purchased it before it was even fully complete as one of the most sustainable projects they had seen in Austin, Texas. We achieved LEED Platinum, core and shell on it, and it's the second largest project in the US to have done so. Some key features for this project are the actually historic reuse of an existing building. You can see the old post office down below that became part of our project. So it wasn't just this new tower, office tower. Even though we were in a downtown, very urban location, the project achieved 46% of its site as open space. 100% of our water outdoors is coming from reused sources, and that's because even on this urban site, we're managing 85% of our rainwater, which is a lot of water. So essentially all that green space you see over there is a large cistern underneath of it and recycling it for both the water feature and all of the irrigation. We were able to cut that EUI pretty significantly for an office building standard in Austin anyway, 14% energy savings off the most recent code. And the other important part, as you know, for grid reliability is shaving off the peak. So we reduced the peak by 22%. And then all of the power was offset 100% through offsite renewables. So back to that idea, intention requires rigor, and rigor is what we use to measure impact. So I want to walk you through a little bit of how we got to the conclusion of using AutoCase. From the very beginning of the project, we set out with our team to really quantify what's going to matter. We didn't want to chase points on a LEED scorecard. We really wanted to first define what were our goals. And usually we think about sustainability in these kind of circular buckets I have here, but tried to really give them a name and define what those intentions were. And then we pursued the rigor of certifications. And the reason I firmly believe in certifications is they help us define what good is around those goals and make sure we follow through on our intentions. So this project achieved a lot of certifications, all of the alphabet soup. We achieved LEED Platinum, core and shell, Austin Energy Green Building. For those of you who are familiar, this was actually the predecessor to LEED, and it was started in Austin in the 90s. We achieved 4 out of 5 stars for that. And then we also, kind of a late arrival to our project, but pursued Fitwell and achieved 1 star rating for Fitwell. We then took data from all of those systems and we were able to then measure impact. So because we had set our intentions, because we had measured them in our design strategies, we were able to use those inputs to help define value back to our client, to our owner, and ultimately to the city and future tenants in this facility. I love the waterfall diagram that AutoCase develops to really, explain to you where all those benefits come from in a really, as an architect or a recovering architect, as I say, in a graphic way that helps people understand those areas of value proposition. So I wanted to share the results with you slightly differently, and first to tell you what some of our intentions were and then how that translated to value. So one of our big values for the owner was clearly to be located in a really strategic place with a lot of opportunities for multimodal transit. So downtown Austin, a huge growth area for the city. How can this building add to and be a regenerative contributor to the urban space and connect to those systems that are already there? We weren't able to evaluate all of the multimodal transit our project had, but even for bicycles, we couldn't hit the LEED criteria, which in version 4 is pretty stringent. We still provided 235 bicycle spaces. So even though we didn't achieve that credit in LEED, we were still able to input the value into the AutoCase. And you can see there on the right, the waterfall diagram of the impact and the value proposition to those triple bottom lines. Cycling benefits obviously most important to the occupants who's riding their bike, but reduction of congestion, vehicle operating costs, and the like. Another intention we had was an indoor environmental quality, really thinking through the kinds of spaces we were providing and how could you create a work environment that made people really enjoy where they were living. That historic building I was talking about became an integral part of our lobby. And so we wanted to make this kind of main street within the lobby area, and there's a conference center. And then also really think about our floor plates to maximize efficiency and daylight penetration, but also views. Not all of the spaces are all of this glazing and trying to use it appropriately where we had people. So we translated some of those intentions into LEED credits for low emitting materials, daylight, and views, and quantified those impacts, as you see on the right, towards rental premiums, which become a huge value proposition to the owner, productivity for the tenants, and a reduction of absenteeism for those working in the facilities. And then the last one that I'll talk about today is energy. How can we use a high performance building envelope to not only reduce energy use, but shave down that peak heat gain and reduce our reliability on the grid when it's most expensive, use efficient mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems, and like I said, reuse water and waste heat where we could. And so taking that data from our energy model and the offsets that were purchased to account for them, translated obviously into electrical savings to the owner and the tenant, but also a reduction of air pollution for the community. So in total, we really maxed out the number of inputs we put into AutoCase, trying to catch as many of them as we can. That resulted in the big benefit to the owner, which actually came through in the sale of this facility. It was one of the most expensive real estate transactions since COVID happened. The community's value, and then ultimately the tenants working there. And then, like I said, that waterfall diagram that really tries to capture all of the impacts there. There's more if you're interested on that project. On our website, there's a case study around all of the sustainability elements and the triple bottom line being a core part of how we define those intentions.
Great. Thank you so much, Ava and Jill, for those case studies. Very neat and innovative projects. So now we'll move along to a live software demo so we can kind of get a look and feel and really determine the general workflow and how we're actually able to input these design elements into AutoCase and how easy it is to actually run the results and download the report necessary to achieve the LEED pilot credits. So I'll go ahead and share my screen here. And we can see our first landing page here is my project. So it's main dashboard that gives us a sense of the location of the space. So in this particular example, we're looking at a terminal extension project located in Atlanta, Georgia. Floor space of just over 70,000 square feet. And we're assuming that the construction start date would be actually today. So very minimal general inputs required to get the project started. And then we'll scroll down here and then we can see the various LEED category selection that is applicable to this particular project. So again, we're going to toggle on energy and atmosphere, which encompasses optimized energy, renewable energy production, and any green power and carbon offsets. water efficiency, which targets indoor water use and outdoor water use reductions, as well as indoor environmental quality strategies, which will encompass any type of interior lighting controls, daylighting availability to those indoor occupants, thermal comfort, enhanced indoor air quality strategies, low emitting materials, as well as quality views available to the occupants of the building. As I mentioned previously in the introduction phase of this presentation, this is in phase 1 of our latest software update. So we'll soon be introducing 2 more categories across the LEED framework. So that being sustainable sites, which will encompass rainwater management, as well as heat island reduction, as well as location transportation being the second major category, which will cover bicycle facilities as well as green vehicles. We're also looking into augmenting the categories to include materials and resources in order to capture some granularities when it comes to building materials, for example. So with those kind of very basic project information set up here, we can go to our LEED design and start seeing how we actually enter in the design inputs in order to run the analysis. So I won't go through each one today, but I'll cover one from each credit category. So we can go ahead and let's go into optimize energy performance, for example. And we can see here that we'll be prompted for very basic inputs that, again, we should have ready as a project team based off our LEED submission. So we'll have the total number of LEED points that we achieved in this credit. In this particular case, we're achieving 9 points, and as well as enter in the incremental reduction in both energy consumption, so both electricity and as well as natural gas. So the AutoCase software is quite dynamic, so you can enter it in different units, whether that's on a kilowatt hour basis, megawatt hours, EUI intensity or energy use intensity. And we'd enter in the incremental reduction in energy use for both forms of energy. And then we can see here on the bottom side that it will also prompt us to enter in an associated cost. So we want to capture both the benefits as well as the costs associated with attaining this particular LEED credit. So if I go to the cost component here, if that project team doesn't happen to have these cost estimates at the ready in terms of the incremental difference in costs to actually achieve this credit, AutoCase is able to provide defaulted cost estimates for various credits, which will give us a high-level analysis and view in terms of what we'd expect to expend upfront in order to actually get those 9 points for under optimized energy performance. So quite dynamic. And then the other major thing that I'll highlight here is under the LEED progress report. So we can see here that overall it'll give us a quick snapshot in terms of the credits analyzed, whether or not we're meeting those required targets in terms of credits, and how many credit categories we're actually achieving with 2 credits, which would satisfy the second LEED pilot credit that I went over earlier. So under the energy and atmosphere credit category, it'll give us some nice intermediary project metrics. So based off of the design strategies that we have inputted in the software, it'll save just under 19,000 tons of carbon dioxide emissions, which is again the equivalent of reducing 162 cars off the road. So this again gives you a nice quick snapshot before you run the results of how my project is stacking up relative to a baseline building. The next one that I'll hone in on will focus on indoor water use reduction. So again, these will be readily available inputs that you should already have at the ready, depending on which stage you are in the design. So it'll ask us for the number of LEED points we achieved for this particular credit, how many gallons of water we were able to reduce in potable water used from a local utility. And similarly, it'll prompt us for a cost. So again, in this particular case, we're going to use the AutoCase estimate, which we just need to enter in the various water fixtures in terms of quantity, as well as the type, whether or not they're low, ultra low flow, or sensor low flow. And that way we can have an estimated cost in order to populate the cost side of the equation. Similarly, I'll highlight the progress report when it comes to water efficiencies. Instead of looking at the tons of carbon reduced, for example, it'll give us a quantified metric of the equivalent Olympic-sized swimming pool saved by reducing our water use within the building. So 0.36 Olympic-sized swimming pools will actually be saved by saving 107,000 gallons of water. The last one I'll hone in on is under the indoor environmental quality category down here at the bottom. So we can take a look at, let's say, low emitting materials. And we can just enter in again the number of LEED points that we were able to achieve under this credit, We'll identify the different materials types that were included in the project design. So whether or not we're targeting paints and coatings, flooring, ceilings, potentially furniture, as well as use the AutoCase defaulted cost in order to provide that costing element associated with achieving 3 LEED points in this credit. And then again, moving back to the progress report here, it'll give us a bit of a different snapshot where it'll really focus on the social-based impact. So it'll give us some quantities and metrics in terms of percentage increase in productivity. So 0.34% for those indoor employees, as well as the potential number of days worked instead of absent. So the absenteeism reduction for those employees within the space. So once we have those kind of very basic project inputs all filled in the software, we can go up to the top right-hand side here and press Run Results. And then this will take all of our project information that we just ran over, as well as take in all the local and granular inputs like local utility rates, the grid emission factors, the building wage, and really provide us an automated business case of how the lifecycle financial performance of the building is, as well as the social and environmental based impacts, representing, again, the triple bottom line. So in this particular project, where we're achieving 22 LEED pilot points, we would expect a triple bottom line value of $6.5 million over the life of the project. It'll also, again, normalize those results in terms of how much value we're generating per LEED point achieved, so just shy of $300,000. Will give us a brief project description in terms of when we expect the construction to start, how long that construction is, so it's going to take 1 year to construct, and the operation duration, so how long the analysis is actually looking forward to into the future in order to calculate all those benefits. So then we can scroll down here, and then as Jill mentioned, we offer a waterfall chart to really represent the size and magnitude and see what the biggest drivers are of this particular analysis. So we'll account for any upfront capital costs associated with achieving those various design strategies. Maybe we have some financial savings from water from the local utility, reductions in absenteeism. So again, having healthier employees makes workers actually come to work instead of being homesick. The reduction in air pollution, reductions in criteria air contaminants such as nitrous oxide, sulfur dioxide, particulate matter, and this is all representative of avoided grid emission factors coming from your local electrical grid. We'll also monetize the value of avoided health costs associated with those indoor occupants, the associated carbon emissions, as well as the financial savings from electricity. So by, again, being more energy efficient, we'll avoid some electricity use on site, which amounts to just under $2 million over the lifetime of the project. And the biggest driver is actually focusing on indoor environmental quality strategies. So if we can make our workers more productive, that will in turn result in the biggest benefit over the life of the project, since employees often represent the largest cost component for actually operating a building, which makes sense. So we'll have the monetized values in the waterfall chart there. We'll have the various credits that we're analyzing under the project here on the right-hand side. And then the other cool feature that we have in the new software update is that we can do a breakdown by credit. So we can actually see, let's say, optimized energy performance, where the benefits and where the costs are associated just with that particular credit. So we can take a look at the upfront capital cost, the avoided carbon emissions, avoided air pollution, as well as our financial savings from electricity. On low emitting materials, we might be able to look at the upfront capital cost for implementing those strategies and the reduction in absenteeism, which is monetized at $110,000. And then for indoor water use reduction, we can see that we might, in order to get those water efficiencies, might have to spend $33,000 up front. But then in turn, we're able to save $24,000 in avoided utility costs from the local utility. But then we'll also have some carbon emission and air pollution. You might ask yourself, how is carbon associated with water? If we actually reduce our water consumption in the building, we reduce the need to treat and convey that water back to the local utility source. Those utility sources often require substantial amounts of electricity in order to actually treat and convey that water. So in turn, by being more efficient in our water use within the building, we're able to avoid the electrical need of treating and conveying the water, which has some carbon emission impacts as well as air pollution impacts. The other one I'll hone in on is really on the social value of water here. And really that's above and beyond the financial savings that you'd have from the local utility, for example. There's an inherent value available to the community in terms of water scarcity. So depending on whether or not your water is being sourced from surface water sources or groundwater sources, for example, keeping that water in its source has an inherent value to the community above and beyond the utility rates that you might be saving. And the last thing we can dive into here is really going line by line in a tabular form in terms of what the financial saving is from electricity, water, any type of upfront capital costs. On the social side, again, increases in productivity at $2.5 million, reductions in health costs, avoided absenteeism rates. And on the environmental side, speaking to the avoided carbon emissions, social value of air pollution, and then it will give us overall how those numbers are stacked up over the triple bottom line. So we can see that one of the biggest drivers here is actually social-based impacts, which is monetized at $3.6 million. So now that we have all the results ran, what can we do with them? We can scroll up to the top here and we can press download results, and there's two different options. One being a 2-page summary, which is very digestible and easy to share with different project teams or the particular client or any other project stakeholders, as well as the full report. And that would be the report that we actually submit to USGBC, which has all of our various methodologies, our sources listed, again, being transparent as possible. So that's a requirement for USGBC. So completely automated reports, nothing needed in terms of any modification. If we want to take a look at the 2-page summary, for example, we can take a look here. And this would be the 2-page report. That's a very concise report giving us a brief summary in terms of, again, life cycle financial, social, environmental value, how many LEED points we're able to achieve in this particular project, the total value generated per point, the total carbon reduction based off those design strategies that we have inputted in the software. And will also give us a nice little text output here, which explains the duration of the period of the analysis, so a 26-year study period, 1 year for construction, 25 years for operation, the actual LEED credits that were targeted, as well as the waterfall chart that we saw previously. Similarly, we'll have the credits included in this report, as well as a tabular format of the various triple bottom line impacts in terms of financial, social, and environmental, as well as some LEED pilot checklists here. So that is the kind of conclusion of the live software demo. Again, if you're interested in learning more, visit autocase.com/lead and we can get you started or help answer any questions. We'll also have listed there any new features that will be released. So as I mentioned, phase 2 will be augmenting the credit categories that are available in the software. So definitely keep up to speed at autocase.com/lead. And I will end there and we can start for any type of question and answers that might have come up throughout the webinar.
Okay, terrific. Thanks a lot. We really appreciate that. It was a great presentation. I want to remind everybody that you can enter any questions in your control panel. We do have a couple questions already, so let's go ahead and get started with those. First question: how long does it take to put in the data and get the submission report?
Yeah, great question. So if you come to the software with the data points handy, and again, a lot of these inputs you would already have readily available based off your LEED submission, you should be able to get the project created as well as inputted in less than an hour ultimately, and be able to run those analyses and then download the reports, submit to USGBC or CHGBC.
Okay, next question. How is the productivity calculated?
Yeah, great question. So productivity is calculated, so again, improvements in indoor environmental quality. So let's say if we're offering greater spatial daylighting autonomy, or if we're actually making the space overall healthier, we leverage peer-reviewed literature in terms of improvements in those indoor environmental quality strategies. And then we have an associated percentage increase in productivity, as I showed in the intermediate metrics before. So with that quantified percent increase, we'll take the local building wage, so depending on if it's an office space, a warehouse, we have those prevailing building wages, and we essentially multiply those by the percentage increase. So if you're that much more efficient by 1% and your building wage is, let's say, $60,000, that's the year-over-year impact, so we'll actually monetize those values.
Okay. Next question. How much does it cost to run AutoCase on one LEED project?
Another great question. So on a project-by-project basis, you can pay $2,000 per project in order to actually get those 2 LEED pilot credits, and that's on a per project basis, assuming you're not any type of USGBC membership. Again, highlighting that you can get 50% off your AutoCase subscription, which includes your first project.
Okay. Which versions of LEED support these pilot credits?
Yeah, so the tool is able to offer support in both LEED version 3, LEED version 4 as well as 4.1. So it's mainly targeted towards LEED 4.1. Will require some modifications from an account manager such as myself in order to make it relevant for 4.1 or 3, but it does support essentially that whole spectrum of LEED projects.
All right. What credits are available for inclusion in AutoCase?
Another great question. As I kind of touched on earlier, so we have 3 major core categories that we have right now in the latest version or update of the software. So that being energy and atmosphere, which includes optimized energy performance, renewable energy production, green power, and carbon offsets. The second one being water efficiency, so any indoor water use or outdoor water use reductions. The third prong being indoor environmental quality strategies. So that's a bit more broader, where it'll encompass interior lighting controls, daylighting availability, enhanced indoor air quality strategies, quality views, low-emitting materials, and thermal comfort considerations. Again, future releases will also include elements in terms of sustainable sites, including rainwater management, as well as heat island reduction, as well as location and transportation, again, highlighting bicycle facilities and green vehicles.
Okay, next question. What type of sustainable investments tend to have the best triple bottom line outcomes?
That's a bit of a tough one, but overall we have found, and similar to the example that we just shared previously, that by focusing in on indoor environmental quality strategies, you can usually get some pretty sizable impacts when it comes to those occupant-driven results. So if we look at productivity increases, if we're able to make those employees more productive, that is usually a very cost-effective way of actually getting triple bottom line returns. Because again, when you look at the full life cycle cost of a building, when you look at energy, construction, design, usually the largest cost component is actually the indoor occupants of that space. So if we can make them more productive, lower their health costs, lower the rates of absenteeism, that usually will provide a good return on investment overall.
Okay. Well, it looks like we've run out of questions, so I guess we're going to go ahead and end early. So if you do have any other questions, there's going to be a brief survey that's going to pop up at the conclusion of the webinar here, and so you can ask any questions. And so Riley, Jill, Ava, once again, I'd like to thank you for an excellent presentation, and thanks again to AutoCase for making this webinar possible. So Riley or Ava or Jill, any parting thoughts?
I'll jump in and say thank you everyone for attending this webinar and taking time out of your afternoon. I also want to thank my co-presenters, Jill and Ava. Thank you very much for sharing kind of your innovative strategies and how you've actually used AutoCase. And again, if anybody is interested in learning more, autocase.com/lead has all the information there, and you can reach out to us. We'd be happy to answer any of your project-related questions.
Okay. Well, just as we say that we're run out of questions, we get some more questions. So we've got a few more minutes here. Why don't we just go ahead and continue with those? Can this be used to make the case for low carbon design?
Yes, very much so. So the current version I shared is focused on LEED, but we also have a general building software as well too. So you can actually determine and being able to showcase if there's various design strategies being proposed, you can see what the most cost-effective strategy is for reducing carbon. So whether or not that's in terms of energy, but also in terms of materials as well too. So yes, you could very much determine the most cost-effective strategy in terms of carbon reduce, as well as just general return on investment in terms of the avoided utilities that you might pay.
Okay.
Go ahead. I want to chime in on that one. I think the important part is also planning for the future. Right now, carbon is cheap, right? We're not all necessarily taxed for it. So part of it is also helping to think about investments we make today and what are those potentially avoided costs for the future. So that's where I think sometimes as regulation changes, the economic model is going to change as well. So this is a good way to at least start to account for some of those future carbon impacts.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'll just echo that as well too, where even if you live in New York State, for example, local law 97 is coming a lot faster than you might think, and the cost of carbon and not being efficient will really affect the building owner's bottom line. there's no getting away from it essentially moving forward.
Okay. So Ava or Jill, how would you compare the effort and cost of getting LEED points with AutoCase versus other points?
It's one of my favorite points. I'll let Ava chime in as well, but we're trying to do it on every one of our LEED projects. I think, as Riley outlined, it's really easy to put this data into the AutoCase software, but like I said, wanted to reiterate from the beginning, to get that data and to get those inputs is not easy. And so I think it's a hard thing sometimes to, once you have the data, it's a super easy process to translate those numbers and a really good way to share what you were able to accomplish through those certifications in a way that quantifies it in dollars and cents for people.
And just to chime in a little bit, if the question is also asking can AutoCase be used to compare points and credits that maybe the client's hesitant to target something versus another thing, that comparison can definitely be done. You can kind of, when you have your project set up, you can, there is a way to do the pre-design stages, like when you're at schematic, to do some preliminary calculations and still input that data to play around with it to see, how much more benefits can, come from, putting in a cistern versus something else on the build, like a different feature on the building. So the analysis can be done. I think we just haven't had the client that wanted that exercise to be done, but I think it would be quite easy to use the software to do that, though.
Okay. Riley, have you seen more usage of the tool in cities that have benchmarking policies?
I would say overall, yes. In some instances, yes, depending on the locality, because the data is a lot more easily accessible, I would say, in terms of having that underlying baseline data that we're able to actually compare against. But also, once you have benchmarking, it's a lot more top of mind when you're actually going to do these energy analysis and seeing the trade-offs of energy efficiency measures, for example. It's a lot more relevant compared to trying to cover a more niche topic that might not be kind of status quo in the building industry.
I want to chime in on that too. I think I've seen some more interest from some of our civic clients, or those who are representing community members or tax dollars or donations, because it's also a way to translate value of their investment, not just first cost, but be able to communicate some of the larger impacts that money is being used wisely.
Okay. One more question here. Have you seen more usage? I'm sorry, we just answered that question. Sorry about that. So that looks like we are done with questions, this time for sure. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and thanks again to AutoCase for making this webinar possible. So that'll do it, everyone. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye now.